Hello, Diane, or anybody watching this video who wants to further their public speaking capabilities. My name is Pablo Tafolla. This is going to be a fast video because there's a 10-minute timer for some reason. And I think that's pretty long as it is. This is going to be, improving your public speaking capabilities with tips and tricks I utilize for my four-way speech and kind of dissecting it a little bit and, what I found success in. Okay, now diving into the first question, is it true? So this is a good time you should believe in what you're saying. First of all, a little tip. If you believe in what you're saying and the point you're trying to convey to a crowd, you're going to sound much more, profound. Yeah, I would say that's a decent word for describing that. You're going to sound more profound as well as just more caring about your subject. A lot of people, and I'm not saying this was last year or anything like that, but a lot of people when they, give public presentations, they talk about subjects that, are interesting, but they don't necessarily care about it. So there's not a lot of truth. There's truth behind their word, but there's not sincerity behind their word. And if you're able to convey that to an audience, it makes all the difference. Now, is it true? This is a good time as well to address any facts. So for me, I was talking about physical fitness, and when asked if it's true, it absolutely is. Physical fitness is very important to someone's well-being, and a fact I talk about in my speech is, the Washington Post stating that, if you walk 11 minutes a day, at the very least, it's going to greatly improve your cardiovascular health as opposed to someone who doesn't. And that's a big thing, so find some kind of fact that you can talk about, and I think it makes all the difference. It shows people that you're not just there with an emotional piece, but you're there with something that has, some kind of academic background knowledge. And I think it really shows the crowd or the audience that you know what you're talking about and conveys a point. Now, is it fair? So this one is good to move away from fact and move toward what's called pathos. Pathos is emotional relatability with an audience when you're trying to convey it. At least that's how I've defined it. So pathos, I talk about the duality of the world. Kind of. I address something like it. I'm kind of going off on a tangent. But pathos, in this sense, is it fair? Yes, it is. Because physical maintenance isn't just about, a 20-year-old running 3 miles. It can be about a 50-year-old walking 1 in a park, at a very, very slow pace. Guess what? Is it different? Yes, but it's the same amount of effort. They still got up at some point in the day and they put on their shoes and they went outside and made the effort. So talk about, maybe it's not fully fair, but even so, the effort made is what makes the person. So, I don't know how you would relate that about another subject. It depends what you're talking about. If you were to talk about beach cleaning, is it fair? Well, it's not always fair. There are people that don't have the time to do so. But, even if you're at the beach and let's say one person goes to the beach for a beach cleanup and they're there for an hour. They're there for an hour and they're there for that purpose. And somebody else is there at the beach for an hour, but they're there with their family and they don't got much family time. Let's say that person that's there for an hour picks up 40 pieces of trash. Okay, that's their motive. They do it. That's a great effort. Now, let's talk about the person who's with their family. They pick up 15 pieces of trash or even 10. They still went out of their way to do so. They exude some kind of effort. They push that into their character with their actions. So, talking about the duality of is it fair? Yes, try to say yes, because, nobody wants to hear like the cruelty of the world. It is not fair. Like, try to say yes and then show how even if it's harder for someone else to do it, it's the effort that makes the character, It's that foundation that really improves you and talks levels about who you are. Now, does it build goodwill and better friendship? So this one was a little tricky, not in my speech, but it's a little tricky to just talk about in terms of generalization. So in my speech, I talk about physical fitness and, the importance of that, right? And, I say yes. physical fitness and maintenance will build goodwill and better friendships. When I lost the weight, I was able to, you know, do more sports and pursue more things, talk to people I really hadn't in the past. And even while I was losing the weight, I was able to show my younger brothers that if you put your mind on something, set a goal, that you can change yourself. And so, it depends what you're trying to talk about, but try to find some kind of link with human interaction, right? That's kind of what we're basing this whole speech off of, is because we're talking to an audience. This is how humans convey to one another. They either want change or they want to show something or expose it or whatever, right? Try to talk about, if we're using, beach cleanups as an example again, yes, it will build goodwill and better friendships. It'll build goodwill by showcasing to the community that we're holding each other to a higher standard, in the sense that we're going out, we're cleaning, and we're being the people that are willing to make change. And then talk about how with friendships, I met my friend of 3 years because they had the same motive in mind, and now we spend a lot of time together, and we can now push and, well, is propagate the right word? And we propagate this idea to the rest of our community. And so I think that's building goodwill right there, and it's better friendships. So try to find something that links to your life and how human interaction is involved. This is a really big part, pathos once again. And so, that's what I found to be useful, at least for me. Hopefully this makes sense, and I'm not just ranting, but try to find, a link between community and better friendships, and how they both intertwine, and how they're, both going up at the same time, a double positive, if you will. Okay, is it fun? So we're going to interrupt the speech. So there's 4 categories, obviously. This is a 5th one. Diane might have told whoever's watching this. And so is it fun is it's a good portion to incorporate right before the final one, to maybe lighten the mood and include some humor. So how I address it is it fun? No, it wasn't. It was not fun at 225 pounds, running 2 miles and sweating profusely. That's not what I consider fun, So lighten the mood. I think it's a good showcase of, charismatic behavior and, tendencies like that. And so if you're able to show that, it shows the audience not only that, you're human, you have emotion, you want to have fun, you want to be up there, you want to be there. But also it's just something that might help you mentally. When I said the joke and, and the audience laughed and thought it was hilarious and stuff, that really does help, where it's like, okay, the pressure's kind of gone down, the time is slowly ticking, you're almost at the 5 minutes, or maybe, I don't know, maybe you're just right there. It kind of takes some of that pressure that you might have, maybe calm the nerves a little. And I know it's kind of late for that, because you're already pretty far in the speech, but yeah, this segment is pretty important. So be able to showcase to the crowd that, yeah, you're charismatic, and, is it fun? Maybe it was fun, Yes, it was super fun. I got to do this. Add a joke. That's a good time for humor. And so whatever conclusion you draw in terms of finding that joke, make sure that it's fun and lightens the mood and stuff like that. Finally, okay, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Kind of have to go through this really fast because the video is going to end. But yes, this is where you reaffirm your first point, your first thesis, whatever you want to call it. Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Absolutely. You want to make sure whatever you're talking about, whether it's raising awareness for something, or you're talking about yourself, or you're talking about a sport, this is a good time to kind of, this web you've created needs to all intersect at this point. And so I talk about how I was able to convey to my brothers, my family, how change is possible, and just other segments like that. Let's see, hold on. Not only this, sorry, I had to pause. Not only this, but it's a positive contributor to society. Seeing people, run on the highway could be motivational to others, and, possibly help them look at themselves and decide, change is very real and they should do it. And so that's my 4-way speech. Sorry, I kind of got cut short at the end. And then when you're addressing the crowd, when you're done, say, thank you for your time and consideration. My name is whatever it may be, and I conclude my speech, or however you want to end it, but make sure that it's fun and somewhat profound. Thank you.